Welcome to the ImpactWayv podcast series, Making an Impact. I'm George Dolatly. My guest today is corporate training and technology innovator, Jeremy Tillman. Jeremy is the founder and CEO of cutting-edge training and knowledge companies TrainUp and Knowledge Flow. Jeremy, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So much to cover today. We'll be discussing technology, corporate training and culture, and diversity, equity, and inclusion, both in the corporate world and beyond. But first, if you would, tell us a little about your background, what you do, how you got here.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks again for having me on the show and have this opportunity to share a little bit about what I'm blessed to get to do. Overall, the vision at trainup.com and Knowledge Flow is to empower growth and shape the future of learning through innovative training solutions. I started trainup.com a long time ago in 2004 to be a place where people can, a marketplace to find and purchase corporate training so that individuals can develop their own skills and reach their goals. And Knowledge Flow is our tech arm. We've really, in these last few years, focused a lot on continuous learning and how do we take the best of all the things that we've learned from 60,000 companies purchasing training at trainup.com to really deliver something that's going to be impactful. And all this kind of harkens back to my passion for life, which is around education and learning. I had a difficult upbringing, and I'm blessed to get to impact people through learning today.
If you could talk a little bit about your upbringing and sort of the forces that affected you as you were growing up, and how it affects what you're doing with TrainUp and Knowledge Flow.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell people all the time that for years I ran away from my story. I ran away from my why. I do what I do, but now I really embrace it. I think that learning is the only thing that can take someone from where they are today and help them to get to where they want to be tomorrow. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it. I'm that statistic. I grew up in public housing. My parents divorced early on. My dad passed away before my 13th birthday. My mom, even though she was working on her bachelor's in business and headed towards an MBA, she developed a substance abuse addiction once my parents, got divorced. And that was a 30-year long battle for her in hard drugs. And so that we found ourselves, living on food stamps and the welfare system and a little bit of child support. And I have 3 brothers and one sister. And it was not easy. Where I grew up, African-American kids just didn't go to college. And yet all of my household did because my mom valued education. Not everyone graduated, but everyone went. And I just instilled in us from a young age the impact of education. Despite our circumstances, we weren't allowed to make excuses in our house. So,
with that background coming up that way, you think about your interest in corporate culture, culture more broadly, human resources, focusing on human. What in particular insights do you think that gives you?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the thing that's probably shaped my view of culture is actually travel. Believe it or not, I've been blessed to visit 35 countries in the world, which is also something that's not common for people in my background. And that has really shaped how I view the world, how I view business, how I view people, and really has softened my heart. But I'll take this back to a story that I haven't really shared. I think I wrote something on my blog about this around a matriarch. There's a lady in our projects who really kind of kept us straight. We could always go over to her house. There was a big grass pit in front of her project, and all the kids would play kickball there or baseball or wiffle ball on Fridays. Instead of going out and partying, we would go and play Monopoly and things like that at her house. And one of the things that what happened is about 10 years after I graduated high school and I had traveled, I would post pictures on Facebook, places that I've been to, whether it's Singapore or China or India, the UK, mostly all for business. Um, I came back to visit her and she says, Jeremy, I've traveled all over the world. And I'm like, how is that possible? I mean, frankly, you're a little overweight significantly. And I know you don't, I'm pretty sure you haven't been out of Alabama. And she said, I've traveled through you. And I looked on her wall. She had pictures of all the places I had been from Facebook. And I think a lot of times we don't think about the impact that we can have on others in our world, even through some of the opportunities that we have or that we might take for granted. And I think that when you start meshing cultures together in organizations, people don't recognize other people's stories. We don't know their backgrounds. We don't know their history. So we just come with our perspective. And sometimes we think that perspective is the norm, when in reality, it may be far from it. And I had one of my original investors, his dad is a billionaire. And I asked him a question. What was it like growing up as the son of a billionaire? I mean, obviously they lived in the most expensive property in Dallas. I think it sold for like $100 million or something like that. And that's just where he grew up, just on these grounds. And he says, Jeremy, I don't know. I don't know any different. And I can't apologize for it. It's just been my norm. Now his jacket is like worth more than my whole wardrobe. You know what I'm saying? But what's interesting is that when we bring all the different people together in our offices and in corporate culture, there's so much that's coming together that we can learn from if we're curious, if we have the courage to ask and be willing to listen. There's so much we can learn. And in that process, I believe there's so much beautiful opportunities that can open up for us. But I haven't always seen that happen. Sometimes in corporation, we check a big part of ourselves at the door. And then we go in and we think that it's all about this, when really there's so much for us to learn if we just open up a little bit.
Yeah, not everyone has the perspective that you have through travel and through your personal experiences. How do you get people into the mindset where they're comfortable enough to look at things, as they've always been done, and admit this isn't working or this could be better, whether it's through organizational inefficiencies or personal biases or whatever. How do you get people to make that mental shift?
One of the things that we always harp on is to try to make it personal. One of the things when people ask us, man, how are we going to battle the great resignation and all of these things that are happening? And then I ask them, do you know what your employees actually care about most? What's the most important thing in the lives of your employees and your team besides work? And most organizations have no idea. So we haven't asked those questions, and we haven't aligned the corporate goals with any level of personal goals. If we want to keep people, if we want to retain people, they have to know that the organization cares more for them than just the work they produce. That's how we're going to build culture and things like that. So when we embrace things like diversity, equity, and inclusion, we've built these kind of, in our Knowledgeful platform, we've built these continuous learning communities, which we consider the safe places for you to discuss. There's not about right and wrong. It's about real and honest. So we try to ask questions and produce and put activities in our platform that allow people to be a little personal, a little open and honest in a safe way to try to get to those things. These are things that have to be unpacked. They're not something you're going to learn. I mean, knowledge alone is not enough to produce change. I mean, how does one become a great leader? Because we go to a one-day leadership course? Of course not. And sometimes when we present knowledge or information alone in our training experiences, it's not going to produce the change that we want, even though that's our expectation and our hope. And so we just encourage companies to do the small things that are small risks in order to make the changes necessary to really steer the ships and understand that it's a journey.
And what are some of the concrete steps that companies can take to create a more inclusive workplace?
Yeah, that's great. Obviously, for us, we believe that inclusion is greater than diversity. And I know that's controversial coming from an African American, business professional. I want to see more people of color, more diverse people, people with disabilities, or um, in getting opportunities. But if we don't create environments where people are going to be valued or that are inclusive, then a lot of times those efforts go for waste. We've seen so many companies create these diverse hiring plans, and they bring in all this, diverse talent that's been different than the traditional way. We work with an organization, and they didn't know, they had blinders themselves. They looked around at their staff and they realized that 80% of their team came from two colleges, two Ivy League schools. Just happened to be some of the schools the founders were from, and they didn't think anything of that. I mean, if you never recruit at a historically Black college or university or in a particular neighborhood, then obviously you're going to pull from those pools. And so for them, sometimes it's just recognition of, oh wow, I'm taking a self-assessment and looking in. But when we work with organizations and we think about some of those practical steps, it's first valuing inclusion, because inclusion is for everyone. Regardless of what's happening in our companies is around the efforts around diversity, a lot of times we have cultures that aren't inclusive, even for people that look just like us. People don't realize, I've seen companies that are predominantly Hispanic or predominantly African American have really major inclusion issues within their organizations because they're not allowing people to have voices, and only the people in leadership get to come up with ideas. And there's so much. So inclusive cultures is really for everyone. We like to start there, because if you can do that work and build curiosity and courage within your organization, then as diversity things happen, you're more susceptible for those to stick and for people to feel welcome.
Yeah, I mean, people tend to lump in diversity with inclusion, and inclusion seems that it would be it's so much harder. You've actually got to work at it. It's not just a matter of, all right, we're doing a good job. Here's our list. We're checking boxes. It's the kind of thing that you have to work on every single day, and it really comes up in places you might not expect.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Inclusion is about culture, and it's not a box you can check. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, and it's emotional. And so you have to have space for those emotions. That's why we created our continuous learning platform, is that we want to say from day one, we're not going to get this tomorrow, but we're on a journey. We're on a journey together, and we're going to get there because it matters. And we build these communities where the conversations can happen, and and the learnings can happen, and the success stories can happen, and the stories of that weren't so successful can be shared, and we can learn and grow together. But one of the things we encourage companies to also communicate is that you're not trying to change people's political opinions. I think that politics sometimes gets confused in inclusion and diversity conversations. Companies aren't there to change someone's political perspective. Inclusion is about the ability to interact, engage, learn from, and excel with people who think differently than you, who might act differently, all of those things. And so it's not about changing your perspective, it's about opening yourself up to other perspectives across the board. And when we do that, obviously we're going to have better outcomes in our business, but personally, things can begin to unlock. We've heard so many stories of people whose home lives have been impacted by the inclusion work in the office, because they realize that even in their neighborhoods and their communities, they've turned, a blind eye. Give you a practical example. One of the things that we encourage individuals to do, because we get a chance to work with not just corporations, we get a chance to work with organizations, nonprofits, churches, tons of different types of institutions where they're taking these things and making them very tangible. We had a church organization that did some work in inclusion and realized that we say all these things are true because of our beliefs and the religion that we follow, but we're not putting these things into practice. And so one example, because even in corporations, we want people to take ownership of themselves. You have to look first in the mirror. And we always share examples of how we had our own issues. And we ask people to, what are some practical steps? And sometimes we have to put ourselves in uncomfortable places if we want to do and see things differently. So one example we encourage people to do is to take their kids to a story time at a library in a different neighborhood. If you only go to the library in your neighborhood, it's very much going to be people just like you. Why not go to a library that's safe in a completely different neighborhood, probably across town, with different people, and go to that story time together? And that's teaching your kids things, and you're getting to experience that as well. And so that's a practical step that reaches all the way down to a personal level for that individual responsibility.
Yeah. It's really an impediment to personal growth, to an organization's growth, for someone to have the mindset that I'm just going to interact with people who are like me, who think the same way that I do, who have the same view of life that I have.
Yeah, no, it does, but it's so comfortable. It comes with, it happens because we want to be comfortable and we want to be safe. One of the things we do in some of our activities is we ask people to create give us ideas and examples, and we throw them up on that kind of digital board where all the words are coming up of a non-inclusive culture. And so you'll get words like I felt shunned, or I wasn't accepted, or I was all of those type things. And we can all agree that we don't want to work in a workplace like that. But then we ask, how have we contributed to that? And people will begin to see that we are all kind of part of these things that tend to happen, and these blockers that come in. It takes a consciousness to make a conscious choice and a conscious decision, and that doesn't come without awareness. And for some people, it comes a little more natural, or we get faced with these early. When I was 15, I left home to go to the Alabama School of Math and Science. You live on campus, take college level classes. It was accelerated learning. It's really key to my growth and development and give me opportunities. And I saw a lot of people who were not like me. We had students from all over. It was the top students in the state, people from Korea and people from China and India. One of my best friends was Sanjay Patel. And so the first day I was there, unbeknownst to me, there was only really, I think, 3 African-American or 4 African-American students in the entire school. It was only a couple hundred students, but it was tough. So I'm in the cafeteria, I got my lunch tray, and I look up and I have to find a place to sit. And lo and behold, there's a table with 4 African-Americans sitting together. And there's a couple hundred, other students. And then I had to make a choice. Where am I going to go sit? And I purposely did not sit with African-American students. And I just made that conscious choice early on. And what happens and what we don't realize is that part of that was I'm shunning a little bit of piece of who I am. And so there's that reverse racism that happens as well. And I'm having to interact with new people and hoped that I'm going to be accepted and valued for the fact that, hey, we're all smart kids coming together to learn and grow together. And the story is great. It turned out great, but there was a courage that it took there, and a curiosity. And these are 2 of the principles that we teach in all of our courses about courage and curiosity. if we're going to build inclusive cultures and be inclusive ourselves.
It takes sticking your neck out. It takes, the ability to do a little something that you might not have done before, or that, like you said, to get yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not everybody can have experiences, similar to yours, where you have the opportunity to interact, in person, with those from different cultures, different mindsets, a different group. But to a great extent, I guess technology is a great equalizer when it comes to that. People able to interact with people, at a click, to interact with people around the world. People who are different than they are, to stick their neck out in good ways and bad, obviously. But there's a lot that young people and people across the board can do today that they couldn't do just a few years ago. Certainly when you and I were coming up.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, technologies had a major play. And I think that in COVID, it even increased the opportunity. But just because there's opportunity doesn't mean that we take it. So something surprising happened for us for one of the clients that we did a pilot with. So we're working with a global company. They've got several 100,000 employees, and they wanted to really focus on inclusion. And we convinced them to take a risk and to try to not only bring the training and the content to bear, but to leverage technology, and specifically to leverage our training flow platform and to build community. And so they agreed that, hey, let's give it a shot. So we did a pilot program, and it was 1,000 people from 4 different countries, from the UK, China, India, and the US. And we picked 250 employees from each of those regions and invited them as this pilot group to participate. And we our community start before the actual training event, because we believe that the expectation shouldn't be just show up, that you should already be engaged and interacting and letting those guards down before you actually even get there. And so even though we conducted the sessions in country, so the China session for China, the session for the UK, session for India, and session for the US were all conducted independently in groups of 250 that were in the actual virtual live training sessions, so that any languages, so one of them could be taught Mandarin and things like that. The platform, our technology, brought them together. So we had 684 out of those 1,000 learners engaging in discussion questions in our platform before they ever attended any of the training. And these people said, we would have had the opportunity to work with so-and-so or hear from so-and-so in the UK. And even if someone answered in Mandarin, it would translate. And so we had everyone in one platform together discussing these issues. And even though in Asia, hey, this Asia hate thing from the US, but the people in China have a different perspective. And then what is the perspective in India? And is it about other issues that are drivers? And what about the UK? And so what happened is that those people got to learn about the issues and differences in blockers in their individual cultures, in countries, and how that impacted the overall organization. This was an unexpected outcome because no one really thought, well, when we do the sessions in China, because the people in the US are sleeping, the people from China will never get to interact with the people from the US. Our platform, the technology, brought them together and allowed them to engage and read and see other people's responses and come together and share in that humanity. So you're absolutely right, but it still has to be intentional.
Right. Well, that's an incredible example, of just what's out there, the opportunities that are out there for people to think beyond, what's in front of them, to beyond what the way they've thought about things all their lives. It's an incredible success story.
Yeah, appreciate it.
You mentioned the Great Resignation. How things changed since the pandemic? With people working remotely, you could be working with people that you're never in the same room with. How does that affect, I guess, both what you do from a training perspective and corporate culture more broadly, as you've seen it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Obviously, the pandemic had a tremendous impact on our business. We were focused on instructor-led learning and on-site training. I'd say 80% of our business was in that area. And, that business was down 70% at one point. It's still significantly down. There's been a big shift to virtual live, and the effectiveness of that, delivery method is not as strong as past methods. But honestly, even past methods of face to face weren't always effective because we tend to silo. We go in for that moment, we take the course, and then we leave, and we're back to the busyness, and there's no way to connect it. So, in this process, where we develop this continuous learning platform, that encouragement and the continuation of that learning has a place to live and develop. But organizations it's been very difficult. There's so many people that were hired that have never met anyone else in the organization. I don't think there's a time in history where it's been that way. It's so HR departments are still scratching their head as to, wow, how do we really build culture and how do people stay connected? Microsoft published their study and they said, we've seen the greatest level of time spent in productivity and yet the greatest level of aloneness and disconnection because of the pandemic. And we don't hop on a Zoom just to check on each other, And so, in fact, we want less Zooms, not more. And so it's really impacted organizations. And it's for us, we're looking at ways, and again, why we built this continuous learning technologies, that we want people to learn together because we're desperate to do that. We're desperate to connect. And we're trying to think about ways that you can do that. And so we're empowering companies to have micro feedback where you're constantly giving small nudges and small encouragements and small thank yous throughout continuously, as opposed to just at those performance reviews or the big moments, because there's less of that we get. There's less time for even kudos, and so there's new things have had to emerge to help build culture and consistency for organizations. But I don't think that companies quite have it all figured out yet. I think everyone's still, hoping that we get back to some sense of normality, which we're not going to. The world has completely changed, and we have to adapt and think of innovative ways to continue to connect and learn. So that's what we're focused on.
Yeah, it's hard to replicate the moments around the water cooler, or just popping your head in somebody's office as you're walking by just to check in. You never know, or you never knew what could come from those things, and those things those things are a lot harder and a lot different when you have to ping somebody remotely or schedule time
Right.
to talk to somebody.
Yeah, for sure.
You've spoken quite a bit about the role of faith in your upbringing and in your life now. What insight has that given you as to how people interact with each other and our responsibilities to each other, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, no, that's a great thing. I think one of the good things that comes out of faith is that we understand the grace that we've been given. I was, an extremely poor kid, as you know, growing up. And when I left to go to the Alabama School of Math and Science, even though the state paid for the facilities and things like that, we had to get, activity fees. We had to get our own bedding and lots of equipment, lots of things that we needed. I'd say it's probably only maybe $1,000 worth of things that we really needed to bring on campus. But I didn't have $1,000. My family didn't have that. We didn't have all those extra sets of sheets and things like that. And I was serving on a Wednesday after youth group, writing encouragement cards at the church I was going to at the time as a teenager. And a ladies group came to me and said, "Hey, we heard you're going off to the smart school. Is there anything that you need?" And I just so happened to have a list in my back pocket. I don't know why I was keeping it with me. Maybe I was just dreaming, like, how in the world am I going to get all this stuff? And I said, actually, I have this list. And I gave it to the ladies group, and they bought everything on the list, sometimes even more than I needed. And I had everything that I needed when I went down to school. And so I think that a lot of times with faith and when we receive grace, it impacts how we want to give back. And so what we do at trainup.com is that every registration supports local education. And we partner with an after school program in the Dallas area that's reaching at-risk youth. And it's a long-term program, and I love that. We start in elementary school, and we hope to stay with those kids all the way into high school, providing after school 3 to 5 p.m. or 2 hours after school, whenever the school time ends, where we're providing reading support, homework support, and a small faith lesson, actually, and a snack happens, 4 days a week. And to get in the program, you have to be reading at least one grade level behind and on free or reduced lunch. And so if I hadn't received so much grace, it's really impacted my desire to really give back, not only in that formal way that we do and our staff and our ability to go and be a part of the program and speak at the program. I've been on the board in the past. It helps us to think about that when learners, like for instance, at trainup.com, when we're helping one individual, every individual we treat the same way, whether they're from a big company or they're just an individual looking for learning. Our staff takes the time to learn, to find out what their learning needs are, and to help source the best training to fit their budget, their need, and their growth criteria. And it's a little bit of counseling in there. People are always getting as much as they can, and we never look at it as to what we're making. Our team doesn't even know about commissions. We are here to serve every single person that comes to our website or calls in to help them find and the best learning to help them meet their goals. And that all stems back from understanding how much that we've been given and then the importance of giving back. And that's how faith has really influenced what I do.
It's amazing, and the personal and the professional feed into each other, and and each one augments the other. Finally, I guess, how can people learn more about Train Up and Knowledge Flow and keep up with you and what you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. Well, you can go to trainup.com. That's our main website. You can go to jeremyblogs.com and find out a little bit more about me. I have some older videos there from my story. I need to write more. It's been I've been so heads down working on unique solutions for organizations. But we're going through a change in our organization as well. We have so much clarity now on the impact that we've had and the change that happened because of the pandemic and the impact that we're going to have in the future in the direction that we're headed. And so we're so bought into helping people, find the right courses that they might need, but helping organizations and individuals build community around learning. So we've got a new thing coming out called Train Up Learn Communities, which are going to actually start from free all the way to paid institutes, informal credentialed education. And we're excited to bring that to bear, where we've collected the best of the best resources and content from lots of vendors, and we're putting in individual learning communities, like an Excel community and a leadership community, to help people build skills, because we really feel that it's all about skills, building skills and training to move up in our career, in our lives. And so people can visit the website, give us a call, 866-540-9677. Nobody picks up the phone anymore. They just chat with us anymore. But no, I mean, we're just here. We're also just a resource for organizations. We do a lot of consulting and a lot of just helping around learning and learning organizational consulting. Of course, we're passionate about the DEI work that we get the chance to do as well, and really helping come alongside companies in small and large to achieve great things. And we have this new institutes concept that we're also doing, which is very credentialed, very formalized learning, but in a new, fresh way where people learn together. We're super excited about that. We got some pretty awesome name brand companies that are in our program now. And so just keep up with us, reach out. Like I said, I'm an open book, so here to serve.
Well, it sounds fantastic. I can't thank you enough for being with us today. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation with you, checking in with you every once in a while. This was fantastic.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the work that you guys do as well, and what you're passionate about, and putting these stories out there and really helping organizations connect, because it's all in this ecosystem of how are we giving, how are we serving, and how are we seeking to make an impact. I mean, corporations, we feel, have responsibility to their communities and to the world. And if we're not thinking about how we can impact, then we're missing an opportunity, not only in inclusion and diversity, but just an opportunity in humanity, and to roll up our sleeves and do this together and make the world a better place.
Couldn't agree with you more. That's what we're all about as well. Again, thanks so much. I'm George Dolatly, and we'll see you next time.